Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the point where we are coming up to our last session of the day, which will be, I'm absolutely certain, an entertaining panel debate. Now, we're going to be looking at it's been a long couple of days. Optimizing operations, fusing digitalization with supply chain management, and I'm delighted to introduce to you our esteemed panel. So on the stage we have Istvan Lench, the Director of Global Logistics at Henkel. Istvan, hello, welcome. We have Gabriel Huggenschmidt, Vice President of Quality Management at Ricola. Hello to you. Janet Chicardo returns, Vice President at Grupo Bimbo. Hi, nice to see you again, back up here. And Robert Snyder, our old friend, Global Vice President at Bentella. Kai Philipp Ronica, the former Head of Operations and Performance at Migros Industry. Trying to say it in my best French accent. And our moderator today, and you're very welcome, is Jonathon Chen, Business Leader of Supply Chain Services at Neo Tangent. Over to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you. So I believe everyone is looking for us, right? Because it's the last show today. It's a happy ending in the next 30 minutes. So, I mean, it's an honor to be the moderator here today. So as we all know, today's supply chain is being more turbulent and disrupted. So how we build an agile and resilient supply chain network, how we plug the Gen AI technology in the supply chain is a very interesting topic. So I hope in the next 30 minutes, based on our panelists' discussion, we are able to give you some insight, some best practice. So hope you enjoy this moment. All right, so let's start. So the first question we had is, what are the most frequent cost-related challenge facing in your supply chain logistics today? So, MS, you want?
I'm happy to start. But first, maybe just to add, so my name is Valente from Henkel. People, when they hear Henkel, they think about Schwarzkopf and Persil, but I'm not from that business. So Henkel is a 22 billion business. It has two parts. One is the consumer brand, and the other one is Adhesives Technologies, and I'm the head of logistics in Adhesives Technologies. So it's mainly a B2B business. So when it comes to the question then, most frequent cost impact are basically because of the unplanned. And that can be two things, is in the supply-demand part, and another one is more external, is the lead time. So it's a global company. We are shipping our products all over the world. And I think you heard a few times the last 2 days about crisis situations like the Suez Canal issue, and that can create a significant cost. And it's not only the lead time, so the 15 days, but when you have a lead time problem in our business, then it means that we need to expedite products, so ship by air instead of sea. And that costs 20 times more and 70 times more CO2, which is again at the end cost. So these are the biggest problems these days.
Okay. So anyone?
If I can just build on it, like coming from a consumer goods manufacturing perspective, complexity. And we had this morning the really good presentation about Estee Lauder when it talked about individualization. And when I look like how product ranges are increasing, just go in a supermarket, how much more different products are there. And to give one example, like planted food is now everywhere. That started like, it kicked off a little bit to become mainstream like 5 to 10 years ago, but you have to manage it in your whole chain. So you have to have suppliers for that one. You have to have, you need a warehouse for that one. You have to have the data managed for all of that one of the new product range. So to manage the product range is getting increasingly a bigger challenge, because everything of that one causes efforts in the whole value chain of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, Robert?
I actually believe if you talk about stock and inventory, we have an opportunity there. There's an opportunity for cost saving, namely over vendor-managed inventory, consignment stock, putting, and this is where IT intelligence is going to help, stocks throughout the supply chain together. We have a different concern. We're very I'm Benteler. Benteler is a company that does about 10 billion US dollars, 9 billion euros in steel tube automotive parts. We see trucking as much more of an issue. If you look at the trucking costs, and then I'm talking about, for example, all of the toll charges that are there, the lack of drivers, the increased fuel cost, going to electrification, I think that is the biggest cost challenge that we are facing. Container is okay. I think container we can manage, certainly if you have more visibility in your supply chain, but trucking I'm very concerned about.
Exactly, I mean, I would say the most challenge is two-party, one's the internal, one's the external. Like Evanston said, geopolitical issues, Red Sea crisis, compliance issues, that's external, we all know about. But the internal costs of stock, overstock, pricing, transportation costs, are we really able to control it? Do we have a visibility in the real time? So from real-time point, we have a 20 past years. We centralize all the service from the end-to-end, prove the visibility. Now we know what is that cost in the real time. With the FOB, it's more marginal as all DDP turn. So we have a whole chain like of visibility from end to end. So that will be highly control your cost down. So this is my point of view. All right. So let's
maybe from my point. Ricola, as you may know, we are food producer for cough drops, mostly in Europe. But our business in the US is mainly drug-based. So actually we have to fight in both branches, food and drug, depending on which region we deliver. And actually when we talk about the most frequent issues, because I think that was the question, we have really only small things like short, late deliveries, small damages. So this doesn't really count up to where it hurts. But when we talk about the one that hurts, then it's really when we have bigger interruptions. And this mainly is based when we have some catastrophes, like in Taiwan, for example. I think this morning someone mentioned it. Last month, there were 5 typhoons. And issues like that, they actually are not showing up in our news, but they influence our supply chain.
Is that true?
And I think these are the big issues, environmental issues. Then we also see that small suppliers, due to inflation, they disappear. You have to source new material, and then you have, again, time issues, which in the end make the issue much bigger and costlier.
That's true. That's true.
Well, I can add on that too, but I think besides what the team is talking and just building on all the climate changes, this is much more than before. So in the US, for example, having a freeze in Texas is awful because the whole state basically gets off, and the reality is we as a food company, and especially with bread and buns and all that, we have to deliver every day. So we are part of that. Now that we have, for example, the situation in Valencia, we have to find a way to send the trucks anyway to this. But obviously, to your point, there are additional costs associated with all this that were not part of the plan and are not considered. So I think thinking about the future is how we can become more, in a way, how we can also predict more things that are not under our control. Because so far we are predicting things that we know could happen with the oil prices, or still we do assumptions, right? But these climate changes and these storms and these things that are coming and are happening are definitely impacting our supply chains too.
Yeah, great. So we have a second question. How can companies ensure the data quality using your supply chain strategy? So Robert, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I think like with many other products, it's very important that you get the indexes, the market developments well visible within your supply chain. So we're using, for example, Transporion as one of the tools that helps us to forecast certain logistic costs, and that helps us also to compare our own cost development with the cost development that we see there. Besides that is, of course, but that's where I think that the ERP systems are very helpful today already, that you get a good visibility on what actually your work in process, your finished stock versus your raw materials is, and that you are staying very closely to the targets that you've set there. A lot of data-driven information available today, and it is very important to make sure that you train your people as well to make them make good use of that information that is there.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, data governance, right? So you have the data owner, and we should be set the governance policies, procedure, who can access modified data, right? Using what data in which circumstance. So also the data should be, I mean, we have a set quality metrics, like a completeness, accuracy, for example, like a time frame. So we should think about alert data. So some alert mechanism, the data not be updated in a certain time, so will be, I mean, so some kind of procedure that they will. And of course, I mean, we have some data clearness, data validation, so to secure the good quality for the management decision.
One thing I would add to this, I don't think we need to explain in this room the data quality, how important is it. But I like that Henkel, the approach on transportation areas. I'm a logistics guy, and there we started a TMS rollout program. But the way it was called Global Logistics Data Standard Program. So the whole organization has learned that the importance here is data. So the way we drove, not the business case, and not about, obviously there was a business case and we were working, we wanted to have benefits on the transport part as well, but it was so critical. Everybody understood that we need to do something there, and then we drove a program for 3 years to have this in place everywhere, and have the right processes as well, because without the process, the data doesn't really work. So we had experience where we rolled out something and we thought that we saw a shipment, but actually that was a delivery. So process without data does not really work. That was the experience, and another learning for us. Yeah, you need to drive this in a global company with a heavy top-down support, and you need to put the resources behind, because it is really difficult and complex.
Cool.
I think there's one point important to mention, like we are in the moment in a transformation of making data-driven decisions, and we need to be able to measure also the quality of the data, because like we have a gut feeling that it's good or not good, but to really be accurate, like coming from an operations perspective, there are some kind of standards which you can put in place, like for instance, when you work with an ERP, like when must a booking be closed, what is considered as this type of waste, or what is considered as a good material, and so on. And really not only just having the data and having the standard, also audit it really, really strict, that you can guarantee what is in, that you can use it, yeah. And making the data quality also a top management priority, because like when we start to put decisions on it and we have not the right data in it, the hugest impact we have probably in sales and operations planning with having not the right demand planning or status of where we are with the production. So there it must come really a topic to monitor the data quality and put in actions if there's a deviation on it.
Sure.
I remember a project we had in the past when we moved from SAP R3 to SAP S/4HANA. I had the pleasure to be responsible for data validation. And actually, we thought our data are okay. We never had bigger issues. And when we started to analyze these 10,000s of data sets, we realized, hey, we have issues. And so what we decided is that we need a workflow for the setting up of all the data. So now we have a workflow that actually has learned that for each material, around, let's say, 75% of the data is already automized. And the workflow goes to different stages. And then the humans, the employees, only have to double check actually what the system gives them. And we saw that gives much better results. And then in the next step, we made the check from the other side. So every month we have a run that analyzes the data backwards, retrospective, and we correct the data that are wrong. And like that, we really could reduce the mistakes tremendously. And maybe one last thing that's the most important is train your people. Train them, train them, train them, because the most errors we still find are human errors.
Still domain part, experience part.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree.
Right. Just one thing to add, because you mentioned the importance of governance on data quality, and I agree with that. The challenge here to find the right sweet spot between governance and speed. And I'm interested in this panel, what's your experience, but what we faced with is we put a quite robust governance on customer master, material master, but when we come to the situation that creating a new SKU took us weeks, really weeks, to have it in SAP or a customer, then that this has basically a disadvantage, a bottleneck in your process, because it takes you a long time until you can ship to a customer. So that was really a problem. That one thing is the governance, but how to make governance that can be fast at the same time. Did you face the same problem? Or?
With the frequency and the challenges with the quantity of data, yes. So it's just, well, right now, I was thinking about the quality questions later, but in the end, it's like, we probably have had a lot of data always, before a lot in paper. Right now, we are getting all this data through, well, it's still some manual and some automatic data. The point here is that it's so much that the capacity to analyze this also in real time is becoming the biggest challenge. So the AI is helping a lot on this process, but it's still, I think, in many of the operations, we still need to do much more with this to make it better use of the data, in our case.
Yeah. Right. So our third question is enhancing planning flexibility by dynamic adopting strategy to meet change marketing demands. So, anyone? Comment? Maybe like the case there.
Yeah, please repeat the question, because I don't think
so
I got it.
enhancing planning flexibility by dynamically adopting strategy to meet changing market demands.
Well,
So what's your best practice for your organization? I mean, have your planning flexible to meet the changing market demands. So my organization that I'm making sure, so we do, like we said, the mid-office concepts. So we set a collaborative demand planning strategy, but not make the demand planning unit only. So we involve sales, procurement, logistics, middle office, because we put it all together, because it's entire chain. So we put it there. So logistics will be support your sourcing products. Is it enough? Do you have enough space? So the turnaround time is okay. Supply, what's your minimum quantity? So we put everything together. So we call collaborative demand planning strategy. And the second, we have to build a flexible supply chain management, a centralized culture control tower. And the third is a technology adoption. I mean, we have to provide the visibility to track trace, and using the historical data, using the machine learning, have a better forecasting. So this is the takeaway in our organization, how we have a more flexible demand planning to meet the market change frequently.
Maybe just from the logistics and so yes, collaboration is important in every level of the supply chain. And this can help when you run scenarios, you prepare for scenarios, but the unplanned is still coming. Yeah? So they are still something that you cannot be prepared for. And then it's very important that you have a good collaboration with your customers. What I saw many times where we did not have this, we wanted to meet the requirement of the customers, an assumed requirement. So we thought that everything is urgent, and if you think everything is urgent, then it leads to a mess. And then it's really important that if you have the right visibility, is there really a stock problem at the customer? Can you make the right priority? So, and a collaboration, then it can really help to get over and then to give priority to the customers whose the platform is really burning.
So they have some research company. So they said the secondary largest challenge in the supply chain is collaboration, lack of collaboration. This is the most challenge, one of the factors there.
Can I add to that? We have since a number of years an interesting development in the automotive industry, because you see that the automotive manufacturers start to plan according to a self-fulfilling prophecy. They try to get the numbers across by just planning them. And in reality, you see that a month before, 6 weeks before, they start to realize this is not achievable. And they start to scale down their numbers. And what I found, certainly if you work with steel, because steel is produced normally 6 weeks, at least the planning is done 6 to 8 weeks ahead of time, you're too late correcting that still. So we have adapted that, and I've seen that our supply base, and this is something that we have seen, in fact, already 20 years ago. And that's also why I was promoting vendor-managed inventory, by the way, because I've seen it with people where we worked with vendor-managed inventory, that we, but also our suppliers, often had a better understanding of what the needs, we of our customers, our suppliers, of what we really needed in their planning. So we would adapt our planning according to what we had seen in the automotive forecasting numbers. We had seen suppliers, or we have seen suppliers that adapted, and not necessarily their finished stock, but sometimes their raw materials, to have some flexibility. And I think that is one of the challenges that you have today as well, to make sure that you know where your decoupling point is and where you're actually going to put your inventory, and to be able to know, or to be able to forecast where that variance is going to be. And that's picking up sometimes little signals in the, just knowing that, hearing over other channels that the Volkswagen factory is talking about taking a shift out, and that kind of information. And that's a very fascinating task today for our planning SIOP department.
That's interesting. Yeah, great.
Yeah, if I may, it's, in our supply chain, we have different product categories that have different shelf lives, that have different models of being stored in warehouses or delivered immediately through DSD. So one of the key things in Sonaway throughout that process is to see how we can reduce the complexity in all the supply chains and find commonalities across the system to be able to also be more cost effective. So there is a lot of work associated with that, but I would say, especially now with all the technology, and I do think digital and automation and all these things is really a huge benefit for our industry, because we can have that visibility, we can have that traceability throughout the whole system, and we can make decisions faster. So very exciting.
When we look on demand planning, like we have two types. Like there's a one which is quite a stable type. Like when you look, for instance, for chocolate and so on, this is quite stable. Like you have some peaks, like in Christmas season, where the people buy more and so on. And then you have other things which are quite depending on external effects. Like for instance, we had this morning ice cream. Ice cream, yeah, when the sun is shining, it's nice and it goes up. But there is literally, there's one important point. In Switzerland, it must be Sunday or Saturday, because people mostly consume ice cream when they are in the swimming pool or something like. It doesn't matter if it's nice between Monday and Friday, because other people, it's something to enjoy, something to indulge yourself. So there are these little external effects which can have high impact, and you need to understand like on which type this product category is running and what kind of effects are going into it to make that prediction. Because like, yeah, with ice cream, you could say like it is, you can take the last year and look how it was there, but more important is like how many nice weekends you had last year to make it more accurate. So you need to understand what is triggering, but this is only talking about consumer goods, what is triggering your demands in that one, and then you can start to model it.
Cool.
Maybe I also can give an example. Our product is a drug in the US, and there actually it's highly correlated to the flu in the US, and our indicator is the flu in Australia at the beginning of the year. When people are sick in Australia in January, we expect a high demand from September to January in the US. Anyway, there are years where the flu in Australia was strong and in the US not, and vice versa. And we have been searching for other correlations, not only the flu in Australia, maybe in other countries, and other factors that correlate with the demand of our product. And I think that's something where we really could start to use AI and databases to find the correlations between your product and the demand. And then you add it with the historical data that you have, and that's how you could optimize your demand.
Thank you. I think most of people is scared, see their forecast, the disease coming somewhere. But it's true, it's true.
Yeah. Maybe one more dimension to it, because Janet, you mentioned there are so many crisis situations that we need to be prepared for. One experience from Engel, we had a major cyber attack a few years back. So biggest warehouse was out for months. And after that, it was a bit of a panic. We did not prepare, and we had no plans. So, but then we structurally looked at what further scenarios we have planned, what did we look at, and finally, we are running our operation as we did before, because we made the calculation, are we going to build now more inventory or not? So the decision was not actually. So, but we did some steps. So we did the necessary to better control on our logistics service providers, whatever possible. We made some decision to have some backup warehouses, like creating master data on time, that in case of a crisis you can act. But the decision was not to invest. But if it happens again, at least we know that what are we prepared for and what we not. It was an interesting learning.
Okay. Great. Okay. So next question might be interesting. Maintain quality and the compliance. How do you ensure the standard are met throughout all supply chain different stages? So, Janice, you want to take this one?
Okay, well, and then
Gabriel
probably will continue. Well, I would say, well, for us as a consumer goods company, obviously quality is not negotiable, same as safety, but quality is definitely in the top of mind of everything that we do. So I think the big change, because I can say 20 years ago, we were doing papers across all the steps of developing, bringing supplier, bringing materials, control process, everything, we were using papers. That was the reality. So it's not that in some way, we are doing something tremendously different. We needed to secure the states or the state of the process, every part. So from the receiving of materials to the end of finished goods, and how in every control point we were having the right parameters. So the difference right now is, for me, is obviously having all this technology going back, that you can have the sensors, getting the real-time information, you can have all the materials and the connection with the vendors, you can have, like this morning they were presenting the integrated business planning, you know where the product is, where the material is, where each work in progress is in your process. So that's huge, because you don't need to run anymore to do papers to get a traceability exercise in 4 hours. Right now, you can do it in much less and do it right. So I think we keep keeping the quality on the stage of the process, but we have less people right now. We definitely have the technology to capture information. We have more tools regarding, for example, vision systems or things that are helping us to look into the quality of the product, the shape, the color, everything. And all that data goes into a system that is much easier to analyze. So, and it's the same for compliance. Obviously, part of the quality processes, we do need to have auditing. So we audit, we verify, it's similar to what the governance you were saying, there has to be a governance in quality, and make sure that whatever we are doing right, because anyway, if the data that comes into the system is not right, we are gonna be not doing much either. So there is the whole management system also behind those two things to make sure it works.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned the management system. In the food and drug industry, actually you guarantee your standards by certifications much more than maybe in other branches. And in the food, it's even the standard that all your supply chain has to take your own standard. So actually you know the supplier of your supplier of your supplier has the same standard as yourself. If not, you have to go and audit them, what you don't want. Mm-hmm. So you all force them to have the same standard. And I think to have a good quality documentation, stable processes, and employees who know what they do, that's the first key in my experience. And secondly, you need to know your risks. And when you know your risks, you need a continuous improvement process to eliminate your risks. So I think these are really 3 key factors. So good processes, know your risks, and continuous improvement. That's on the process side. And then, of course, you need agile teams to really react quickly. And then what I saw, what really is also key, is bring your people together. So use Teams or whatever, a platform, meet them maybe once a week in order to push. Because if you don't push, you lose the speed. And I also often take part in these meetings because I sometimes implement some changes, but I realize when I'm there, I have again the feeling, does it work, doesn't it work? And as a manager in a high position, you sometimes think you implement something and it's just working. But I really see you have to go there, you have to verify if it's still functioning.
Cool. Now, one thing to add from the quality of the data, it was in your question. I think the technology can help to avoid manual intervention. What I experienced, I have an example for that service level measurement. Before at our company, there were a chance that people could manipulate the data. Yeah? So they could change and manual data input for actual time of arrival. So a lot of manual input led to low reliability. What we did, wherever it was possible, we automated data inflow, or for this example, for the actual time of arrival, we implemented a track and trace solution when we really got the right data when the customer received. And now all the measurement is coming right directly from our SAP and then TMS. So the customer is requesting, nobody can touch it. If the requested date is that and the amount is this, nobody can change it, and we are measuring it against the actual invoice. And with this, we can secure quality in the whole flow.
Cool. I think we are much more connected to our suppliers than before, and because like also we have more information, so we are more connected in different types of. So I think this is quite a big chance at the moment to further establish the collaborations. And yeah, I think there's also like, because we're all in the same boat at the end when we look about data, so there's more openness, like to work together in terms of data governance with suppliers.
Yeah, I echo what Janice mentioned. You use less people manages all standard compliance with technology support, right? So I believe from compliance point of view, what the regulation come to us, we should split domain first, and put the technology combine those domain, so it will happen, and we can have control entire compliance quality, meet the target. I mean, compliance is about how to follow it, but the quality we need to follow to measure. So how to measure it? So based on technology, based on domain design, we set the rule there. So this is my take. All right. So we have a last question. I know. So this is a standardization and the centralizing operation. So how can we improve control and decrease variability? So.
Yes, standardization is always a good thing, as I already said, have stable processes. Centralization, makes sense. It's not always very much appreciated by the people who have to give up their power. But I think when you make clear to different sites or to your regions that they can use their own processes. You give them the principles. Let's say you force them to work with SAP, and you give them the basics, but you leave them the freedom to find their own solutions, as long as it's in a frame that you can live with. I think then it's great. Then it's good for you as a centralized company, and the facilities and the regions can find solutions that are ideal for them.
Cool. I'm a big fan of the concept of having a factory in the factory, like having small cells which can act autonomously. To give an example, like we're here in Antwerp, and it has a lot of nice restaurants. Now, just every of these restaurants in Antwerp, they have their own planning what kind of food they need. So now think like you make a central planning for all the restaurants in Antwerp. How long does it take, and when there will be the business case of that it is more efficient to plan all the food supplies for this one. So I think there must be always a mix between like their clear standards and governance, who provides like, who's defining the playground for all of the operations you do. But on the other hand, you must keep the autonomy and the capability that they can run, and that they can run the business within that.
I agree. However, you should have the transparency. So I think that's what you're saying as well. And there's many reasons for that transparency, and that you need it. You need it for reporting, you need it for planning purposes, but you also need it for due diligence purposes. And that is where there is a big challenge throughout the supply chain still, and I think that is one of the outcomes of this legislation that you're going to see, that there's going to be more centralization of data. But I agree, I think you should leave the decision making as long as you have your settings, because indeed I think most of us have been plant managers as well. There's nothing worse than having people doing the settings of their own machines, because everybody, there's of course always black magic, but at least that part needs to be controlled. So it's always a delicate thing. What do you decentralize, and where do you centralize again?
Yeah. Well, in our operations, we have that mix, basically. So there are things, obviously, that are going to be centralized anyway. For example, when you're thinking about the ERPs, in multinational companies, that's pretty normal that we need to have that around the world, and has to be the same system to be able to have that transparency that you were mentioning. At the factories, we do have in our processes, well, you know, the flower is a living organism anyway. So we have some things that we control and that is standardized. There are some things that they cannot move, or the people on the floor cannot move, but there are some variables that they can adjust, and that's part of our standard process in the different operations. So we do have those mixes for them to be able to make decisions, but definitely the PLCs or touching that,
Exactly.
definitely not. So I do believe in the standards. The standards help a lot, especially right now with all the turnover of the people. So new people coming to operations, coming to logistics, coming to any of the areas. It is fantastic when we have already standards, procedures defined, so it's easier to bring people on board. But it could definitely have some level of flexibility for the opportunities, the performance improvement, the continuous improvement to make it better. So I think it's a combination, but there are things that is very good to have standardized.
Sure. I think a bit risky that, and many times this is the challenge, that if people's perception is that if you standardize, then you don't have the flexibility. That you can have multiple flavors in the standardized processes as well. And I think what I see in our case that if we go to the really standardized transactional, then it goes to a back office part of job, and that's where the flexibility is the lowest level. So that back office is receiving something and executing. In the front office, we have standardized processes, but they still have the flexibility because they need to deal with different cultures, countries, customers. And I see it is possible.
I don't know where these misconceptions is coming from, that standard is decreasing flexibility and so on. Because for me, it's quite the opposite. Like imagine like when you drive a car and you have an old style car with a manual gearbox, and like just imagine like every day the first and the second are in different places. So the first thing you have to do is like really to focus to get, this is a standard setting in place that you can focus on driving the car. So standard helps us to have the mind free to focus on what really matters at that point. So every standard gives us even more freedom.
Completely agree.
Yeah. Yes. We had an interesting experience. I was just talking about that over lunch as well on my table. I'm a firm believer of everything that is repetitive and standard needs to be standardized as well. So we had it was actually a thesis student that analyzed all of our invoicing processing on logistics in the US. And he came up with 28 different ways that they were doing it. And there was only 20% of the practices that were done according to a standard and way that we would like to do it. I think that is an example of a process where you would like to say, okay, if I don't standardize it and if I don't automate it, I'm going to lose a lot of efficiency. So you need to have certain processes where I think you need to standardization, look at how far you can automate it, and you need to have other standards because that's going to, if people don't need to check invoices anymore, it's going to free up time to do analytics, to do negotiation, for example, as well. And that goes back to, I think, the story that we heard this morning on Unilever, what the guy was saying.
Cool. So, except we have a lot of experience with decentralized, centralization, standardization. So, if we really want to control the cost, we consider the streamline the process from the end to end, not only the standardization, right? So, my colleague yesterday mentioned is an unchained supply chain, demystify the bugs, open those miserable components, finding out the best solution, re-engineering the process. So this is what we Newton did in the past 20 years. All right, so then thanks for everyone. Let's really see any audience have a question. No further question. So we're retired. Thank you.